Wagwan boys and girls, ladies and gents, welcome back. Glad you made it. It's another social production. We're doing it on Wednesday, March the 8th, 2023. Thank you very much for joining me. If it's your first time, buckle up, buckle down. If you've been with me for some time, you know what it is. We're here to have fun here from Toronto, Canada, wherever you are, whether you're down south in the US, further down south in Mexico, South America, as per usual, Africa, Europe, Asia, New Zealand, Australia, Papua New Guinea, Antarctica, wherever you are on them islands. Shout out to you. Thank you for joining me. Where can you find these videos? Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Instagram. Follow me. Search Rob Sadri or Glad You Made It on YouTube and subscribe there for the full-length videos. It's free of charge, of course, for everybody to enjoy once again every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But if you'd like to give back, and I'm glad you do ask that question, it does get brought up often. You're like, is there any way we can support this show? Patreon.com/Rob Sadri. Otherwise, enjoy it for free. Pass it around like hotcakes and free drugs of your choice, of course. And we just have fun around here. We just have fun around here. Let me get a sip of this. Boys and girls, ladies and gents, it is, man, oh man, lots of exciting events are happening in and around the world. And what do we do around here? You know what? Because we're a new show. We're a new comedy podcast starting out. I should give a little bit of, because sometimes you never know when you start and new people are joining in. If you're just tuning in, if it's your first time, again, some people we're slowly building momentum, but every once in a while I like to recap as to what it is we're here trying to do. Spreading love all day, every day, 3 times a week, all year round. That's what we do. We ask questions, we grapple with ideas, we share personal and societal stories or concerns or whatever's interesting that really comes to mind. Basically, that's the whole gist of it. So if you're like wondering what is it? It's an entertaining show for about 50 minutes to an hour, and you come in here, you relax, you put on the podcast, you wash the dishes, you change your baby's diaper, you are cooking for your lover, you are finishing up the assignment that's due that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to write an essay, but you're like, man, I'm at university right now and I just need, 50 minutes to an hour of give me just solid entertainment and maybe talk about some ideas that might be even like we were talking about it too, and like whatever it is. You're pushing out papers, you're a nurse, you're a wet nurse, you're assisting somebody in the middle of it, and you're like, man, how do I make the childbirthing process at home as a doula? Bring this show along, put it on, and all that screaming and yelling from the mother would be drowned out if you just crank up the volume of this show right here. Enough for her yapping around and like, oh, I'm in pain. Give me more drugs. You should have thought of that and went to the hospital. No drugs here. All, old school, au natural, just squat and give birth. Find a nice big old tub of water, get in water. Let's do the water births. Whatever you're welding out there, you're in a welding station. Is that what they're called? You're a welder underwater, dude. There's an octopus on your shoulder. Put the show on, enjoy. So who's it for? Everybody. If you're tuning in, thank you very much again. So I do appreciate your love and support, trying to give it back right at you. We'll go through some stories today. We'll go through some events. We'll see what gets covered. If anything, we're just here to have fun. That's basically it. That's the essence of this show, and learn and grow together. One interesting little thing that I did see the other day, just being out on the balcony, enjoying a cig, if you will. I'm looking down onto the streets and I notice a creature just kind of like, making its way across the street. I'm like, what is this beautiful, wonderful creature with the pointy ears and the fluffed up tail looking kind of gray from a distance? Is it a dog? Is it a doggo that's on the loose? Look like a husky? I'm like, nah. The way it's moving, it doesn't seem to have a collar. It looks a little bit too feral, a little bit too free to be a dog. That was not a domesticated animal. It's just the way the shoulders went up and down, just like, oh, I'm just here. What is this? Little garbage in this backyard? Oh, what is this? Little food here dropped off from last night's people who were coming back from the clubs on the downtowns, and somebody dropped half a burger. Let me just munch on this half a burger here. Thank you very much for going out on the weekends. What is it though? I'm looking at, I'm like, bigger than a dog. My mind immediately went to like, man, do we have wolves in this city? Is that a wolf? But I'm like, it's larger than a dog. It looks like a husky. It's not and I've been around dogs. I know my canines. I know my canine unit. I train with canines. I've trained canines. in the drug department. I wish I trained no, I did. As a matter, I did train a few canines to become really drug detectives. And every once in a while, you'll hear Toronto having a big bust of drugs. We're busting. Well, guess who's training these dogs with the canine noses? And I sit them down. I give them all the cocaine. I make sure that they're all sniffing the powder. They're getting used to it. They become reliant on it. They become dependent. I make sure they go through withdrawals so that when we're out on the hunt, well, they're hungry for that white yum. But that's what it is. The point is, ladies and gents, it wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a doggo. It wasn't a husky of sorts. It was, I believe it was a coyote. I believe it was a coyote. But I'm like, man, and I've seen coyotes in and around the city, even like literally a park that's very close to me. I go for hikes every once in a while when the weather's permitting and it's nice. And I've encountered a few coyotes in my day, so I know what, and I'm like, yes, that's probably, and I Googles, I get back inside, Googles, and I'm like, let me just get a refresher of what a coyote looks like from, because I've seen it from above. I don't want to be just making assumptions. I Googles an image of a coyote, and boom, there you have it. Pointy ears, gray, fluffy, kind of got, you know, walking with a little bit of extra swag, walking with a little bit of that extra confidence, you know. Not quite doggo, not quite wolf. Where is it? Right down the center. That's where it is. But I'm like, shit, man, we got the coyotes. And then a few days later, I read about a news article coming out. I forget whether it was Brampton or Mississauga, somewhere in the city. They've spotted a few coyotes. So that's what, in the GTA, we do have coyotes, I think. They were here before. I've seen them before the Schmandy Pandy. But I'm assuming once the Schmandy Pandy kicked in, they came in a little bit more. Just because everybody was like, you know, not going outside as much, and these guys are just roaming. I guess it's been normalized because this is the city, baby. We're Midtown City, almost like, you know, close to, we're core town, not down to, but like close to, you know, and we're in the heart of the city essentially. Where you're seeing coyotes in the heart of the city. Careful out there. How do you prepare your loved ones or your young ones or the vulnerable people in your family? If you've got a young child and you're walking with them and you see a coyote, what an excellent opportunity to raise this child to be a ultimate fighter or some sort of a grappler, because you always hear stories of tough babies in the eastern parts of the world. You're like, where are the toughest babies coming from? Dagestan and other parts of the former Soviet, or is it current Soviet? I don't know, you know, just east, something that it's where are rough babies coming from, or at least tough babies from maybe a country that ends with Stan, maybe a family that raises their child just due to geography. It's just due to geography too. It's just like, you know, the topography, just the climate makes it essential that babies are, you know, wrestling large pieces of rock or a bear, or well, guess what we've got here? Coyotes. No, there should be no reason as to why Canadian children should not be dominating the worlds of the UFCs, any other form of martial arts or MMA, really, just, you know, or, you know, recreational fights and stuff. I'm not saying that go out there, but like if the occasion comes and you're like, how do I prep my child to be just a killer, a vicious, just, you know, on demand, snap your finger, and then, oh, little Sarah's just running and just, you know, grappling a coyote. Sure, she might come out with a few scratches here and there, but like, it's, you know, at the end of the day, do you want to raise the child that's, you know, emulating Valentina Shevchenko, or do you want a baby girl who's not Valentina Shevchenko? I can't think of just like a reg baby, you know what I mean? So next time there's a coyote, if you got a baby or two, be like, you know, they're not, just tell them, let them in on the know. Be like, they're not quite dogs, so be careful, but they're not wolves here, you know what I mean? So, especially if it's like one, just, you know, or do you live with elderly folks in your family? Do you have somebody pushing late 90s, early 100s, but they still got an extra kick or two, or a little bit of a extra hop in their step still? They're like, man, I'm not slowing down, none of this shit, but I still, and they can't jiu-jitsu like they used to jiu-jitsu before, because they're a little bit more brittle, they're a little bit more stiff, they're not as agile as they used to be. Animals, man, animals and the elderly go hand in hand. Put them face to face. You see a coyote drooling and bring along grandpa. Guess who else might be drooling, dude. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we see your drool, creature. Match that drool, fam. Just let me take out Grandpa's old teeth. You know what I'm saying? Who's drooling now? We just level it up, level it. So that's what it is, and then let him loose. Get Grandpa a new, get Grandpa some vintage workout gear, if you a windbreaker, if you will, a one piece or a two piece matching with Reebok sneakers, with or something. And just let them loose, baby. Just let them loose. Let them, 5 to 10. They say honestly, 11 minutes of daily exercise is all you need, but high intensity exercise, ladies, and using what's available to you, like nature, like animals. So there is that. If you're out there, normally people will say be careful. I say saying be careful means that here we, as the top dog creatures of this planet that we are, which is being, there's debates as to whether or not we're being visited, as to whether or not there is potential for some sort of, until it gets confirmed, we are top dog in this bit. So saying be careful would give us the impression that we're not. And you let those fluffy, pointy-eared, gray fluff balls, let them know what's up. If you've got, again, if you're just, and you're like, what about myself? What about I'm just like cruising through life, I'm kicking butt, I'm in my 20s, I'm 30, I'm in my 40s, 50s, just like relentlessly going after life. And should a little coyote show up in your way or your path or your doorstep, because you never know these, because that's the thing, man, we nip it in the bud. You don't stop it on the streets, they will come to your doorstep. They will come inside your living room. They will take over your life. Next thing you know, they're showing up at your work and you're out on the streets. It's wild. I've seen it happen. Not really, but let's just say we did. Let's just say we did, and we do. It can happen to anybody. So next time you see a coyote, instead of taking photos or reporting it, pounce on it. Give them a noogie, just a wet willy or something. Let them know what's up. Don't be just walking around these streets like this ain't like, it's what it is. You let one know, they'll spread the word themselves. So don't stay safe. Be vigilant. Be offensive. Just say something that'll like disrespect them, essentially. You know what I mean? Don't be like, oh, I gotta be careful. Nah, fam. You diss them up nice. You be like, how does it feel to be walking outside in that cold with the, oh, you're built for this shit. Well, guess who else is built for this shit? And then you just zip up your large winter jacket and you let them know what's up. So that's what's happening in and around this beautiful city. A lot of exciting events are happening. Boys and girls, of course, we'll get to discuss as many of them as we can today. And there's always Friday, baby. But that's what it is. Loose Wednesday. It's Loose Wednesday, and we're just having fun. We're just shooting the shit. It's always a pleasure to be amongst you. I'm very grateful for everything. Just very happy, doing the best that I can, enjoying life. And then you get to read stories and you hear about stuff. And all around the world, the breaking news right now. One of the many the news is always breaking. I've never seen the news fix anything. I've only seen breaking news. Breaking news, fam. I've never seen fixing news. I've never even seen just a neutral news where it's just like, it's not breaking. Because maybe if it's always breaking, fixing would be a far reach. How about just news, just reg news, nowhere to be seen. But breaking news, man, that shit's breaking. You can take it when you're on a break. You can take it when you're grilling steak. You can have it with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's always breaking. The point is, fam, everybody's talking about it. The Canadian intelligence services has come out. The CSIS, which is basically the equivalent to, I guess, down south in the U.S., it's the equivalent to your CIA. Or if you're in Europe, if you're in the U.K., it's the equivalent to maybe like your MI5 and shit like that. It's intelligence services. They've come out recently. It's not the first time, but I was reading different reports, different news articles, different stories just to see what's up, because I've been hearing murmurs, rumors as to potential interference in Canada's election. In the past two federal elections, we've been apparently getting interfered by the CCP. That's the Chinese Communist Party. Man, do they like to party. These guys are a bunch of party animals. So rumors have been coming out. It's actually more substantial than rumors because it's coming from CISA. It's coming from our intelligence services. Our intelligence services have apparently informed Justin Trudeau previously, and our elections are apparently tampered with or meddled with. They're meddling. They've been meddling for quite some time. The CCP from Beijing, they've tried to donate to the Trudeau Foundation way back. They've apparently favored and pushed for particular candidates, liberal leaning candidates for the most part, and because they realized, apparently they're like, Canada, how do we get Canada to be more favorable towards CCP and the Chinese Communist Party's way of doing things? Let's push a little bit of that liberal agenda and just back one party in particular, and cause a rift, cause a divide in society for one and Canadian. And we see that, and I'm like, man, how much Chinese interference, Chinese government interference do we have in our elections? How much Chinese government interference do all other nations around the world have when it comes to their elections or policies and stuff, and the way they're running their country? It's a little bit, and we've been getting different stories. We've had incidents of secret Chinese police stations in Canada in response to these stories unraveling and unfolding before our eyes. I guess Justin Trudeau was coming in, and in order to deal with this, he said that he will self-appoint or handpick it's a new title. It's nothing that this is a title that I've not heard before. Rapporteur. It's an agent. It's handpicked. It's an agent. It's a fellow or a lady who will personally look into the matters at hand, even though the matters at hand were brought up by our intelligence services, which is hopefully reliable. And if it's from your intelligence services, then what? So the public in the House of Commons and just on the streets too, everybody's like, man, we should probably have like a public inquiry into this. Somebody who's going in objectively looking into the matter and see how deep does the rabbit hole go? How dark is that hole? How tight is it? How is it wet? Is there any lighting? Will it crumble once I'm in? Is it harder and harder to get oxygen as you go further and further deep inside? Yes. So all sorts of questions are being raised. Should we have a public inquiry? Of course. That would make for, an honest assessment of the situation and what we have to deal with in order to be able to preserve what's at stake, which is our democracy, which is our, just freedoms and notions and values that we hold near and dear to our hearts and farts as Canadians, as members of Western society, things that we uphold and cherish, and people have died for this shit. Our grandparents, some of our great grandparents, some of our grandparents, most of our, I can't speak from a personal experience, but overall people. Anyway, the point is, ladies and gents, instead of getting a public inquiry where it's like objectively being looked at, we're gonna have somebody handpicked, just like, because once you want the truth and there's a lot of stuff to be like unraveled and uncovered, you don't want. And let's say you're in the game of like not giving out the truth because you're just like not that guy. Justin Trudeau is not a friend of the truth, not a friend of the old transparency, at least when it comes to his business and what he does. I would say, looking at his actions over the pandemic, I would say they more so resemble the actions of a CCP leader. They're coming in with the lockdowns and forcing everybody to close down their businesses, blocking people's methods of protest, freezing assets, blocking banking. These are all very authoritative methods of governance, and it can be seen. You're like, man, what does that remind you of? I'm like, Beijing, China, reminds me of But so who's he more aligned with? Is it clear as day? Is it how long has he even been in position for? I'm just like wondering why. Is our politics is the what's going on? I thought as a prime minister you served 2 terms, 4 years each, and then he's in there for like 8 years. And apparently, I looked it up. Apparently, if all just goes as is, he'll be in office till 2025. What's up with that? I thought it was 2 terms. Of no, we're not doing it 2 terms, 4 years each term. You get in there again. What is going on essentially? How do we change things around in Canada? And I don't have any answers or any, and I don't know anything about nothing. All I know is that when I look around, I don't see, for the past while at least, I don't see Canadian interests being put first. I see opening up the doorways and gateways to foreign investment groups coming in, buying up all the lands and the goods and the Candas, and then renting out the Candas, and then buying up the land and whatnot, and having influence in our domestic and foreign policies as to how we run our country and what we cherish and what we value as a nation. What does it mean to be a Canadian? These things evolve, and it's an evolving concept, just like every other nation out there that's constantly looking at themselves, looking at each other, looking at us, looking at you, looking at me, looking around and trying to figure out what it is that it is the best way to move forward from the position that we're in right now. And man, oh man, how do we? It's problematic because it's part of the system needs to hold. It's you don't want to. The system needs a lot of just like, I don't know what it is, but it needs to be. We need to get rid of some old ways of doing things. I don't know how to go about doing that personally. I don't have any. Again, I have no clue. I just know that there's way too much money and politics. Just too close. Too much relations between money and politics. It's like money and politics are essentially, I would say, money and politics are like brothers and sisters having sex. Is it possible? Of course it's possible. Should it happen? No, absolutely not. Unless you're like the last 2 people on earth, then you know what? Fuck it up. Incest it up. We need to have babies. Will it be a slow and gradual and most likely painful point of evolution if brothers and sisters are? But I think low-key, read parts of the Bible. I think low-key parts of it, haven't read the whole thing. Parts of it seem like a little bit ancestral, not gonna lie. But let's forget biblical times and let's go hundreds of thousands of millions of years ago. If you were the first people on earth, few of you guys were probably, few of our guys, it's our guys essentially. It's a collective. We're in it together, baby. So, but should it happen? And not at this point. How do we remove money and politics as much as possible? Like, how do we just like separate it? Because like, no, bad politics, bad corporate money, bad corporate influence, bad, naughty, not, but that's any other place. Business, monies, do it up. Politics, money, again, very, very much like incestual sex. Is it possible? Of course it is. Should you do it? I don't know. Do you want a bunch of retired babies that are just like, run around just bumping into sharp objects, poking out their eyes, chipping teeth, scraping ankles, bleeding from all sorts of orifices, oozing and pussing babies? Do you want that? And again, if it's a necessity, if humanity had to start, should you find yourself in that sitch, no judgment from any of us. Go ahead and get that bad boy started. But given the fact that we're here, no need you to be going around, doing the incestual sex with your brother or sister. And the same thing with the money and the politics. You want to do business? Plenty of business. Take it elsewheres. Don't be coming in here and be like, let me find a way to influence politics in another foreign land by, purchasing up some potential people who are running in different districts, or are you going to be a member of the parliament? Let me make sure that your competition doesn't get in, let me endorse you, let me come to your fundraiser. Like, do you have a charity that I could potentially donate $1 million to? You know what I mean? These things happen, and then we look around and we're like, man, why are most government officials around the world cunts? How does that happen? And I no idea. I would say follow the money. Most likely, it's got something to do with the more cunty the political leader of any nation, the more marriage with money and politics is the deal. Lots of cuntiness, lots of money, for people no good. But that's where I'm at right now with that. In terms of how do we reduce it? How do we reduce it? How do we get rid of it? How do we nip it in the bud? Matt, first of all, like I say, 8 years for a prime minister is enough time. So like, how do we first of all, and as Canadians and everybody else watching globally, because nothing is more exciting than Canadian politics sometimes, where you watch stuff happen at the House of Commons and whatnot. So the thing is, since everybody's watching, how long is this guy going to be in office? Let's just get somebody else in. And I think we've got a good rep right now. We've got a good solid guy. I like Pierre Polyev, and I think he would do a way better job, just like looking at him, looking at JT, looking at him, looking at JT, looking at him, looking at JT. So like, how do we gotta wait till 2025, fam? Can we do it like next week? Can we, because this guy's just like, he's JT, I would say, it's debatable, man. It's debatable. Yeah, looking at his actions, it's hard to say that he has the average Canadian's best interests at heart. I would say he's very, he's for the status quo. He's for the big corporate money. He's for the silencing of different voices. He's for, pitting people against each other and labeling just regular average day folks truckers. He named our truckers who went down to Ottawa to protest as all sorts of horrendous name calling and finger pointing, whilst they were for the majority, like 99.9% of people, were nice, hardworking citizens of Canada, just going there to try to like fight for their rights and freedoms and our rights and freedoms, which I highly appreciate. But and that's what you get as a. So, our elections a little bit, tampered with, coming in from the central, coming in from we don't have a central intelligence agency, it's our CSIS. Coming in from our intelligence services, they're saying there's meddling. How much meddling? Look at the actions of our leader and you tell me how much meddling, look at, so that's what's going on in Canada right now. How do we, but as a man, so there's going to be one guy, and just like before, when we had to look and see if it was justified that JT went and used the Emergencies Act, which is basically the equivalent to in the United States as imposing martial law, were his actions justified? I believe he used a similar tactic, which was, get a person. This time it wasn't a rapporteur, but it was just more like, get somebody who's aligned with your way of thinking, and all of a sudden the inquiry goes right. Have millions of jobs been lost? Have millions of families been impacted? Did we impact children in a negative way in terms of how they're developing their just cognitive abilities, learning abilities? Did we create a lot of people to commit suicide because they didn't have access to their, AA meetings or churches or places of worship, or just rather, you couldn't even go out and do it? So overall, was it justified to implement these measures? Once we do an unbiased, objective look at the situation, and we have a full, potentially, maybe, allegedly, I don't even know, but I'm just assuming if I've got a briefcase filled with money, a lot of money, it is, as a rapporteur, and I have connects, and I lean a certain way, and I think a certain way, and a job's a job, and just, is it wrong or is it right? Flip a coin. What is it? It's wherever the money's coming in from and whoever's, funding and pushing certain ideologies. I don't even know what I'm saying. The point is, fam, that we've got an issue. So we've got an issue and we got to nip it in the bud. And how do we get rid of it? Starts from the top, dude. Starts from the top. That's what I'm just saying. But that's just, that's just for, how do you guys and gals, that's just how I feel. How do you guys and gals feel? Do you think there was any meddling going on in Canadian elections? Should we have a public inquiry, or should we have somebody who is hand selected by the Prime Minister himself so that he or she can come in however long time it takes to do an inquiry into these matters? They'll do their research and come back and be like, there was no meddling or not enough meddling. It was low meddling. Or they'll say something like, all right, fine, we found it. Maybe they won't say no meddling. They'll be like, all right, there's a little bit of meddling. And then they'll be like, oh, there's always been a little bit of meddling. And is that true? Quite potentially, yes. There's always probably some sort of, when it comes to elections, both domestically and in terms of international interests coming in, always. Why? Because of this, again, the marriage between politics and the monies and the corporations. That's why. You just got to look at our news here in Canada, our programs that get, our stories that do get covered. It's always breaking news. It's never fixing news, and it's never some news that's just neutral. Like I will see right now in Mississauga today, 23 hours ago, I just saw a video. In Mississauga, we are producing armored vehicles to send to the Ukraine. It's depicted as a story, which has got good elements to it. Don't get me wrong, but it's depicting Ukrainian refugees working in Mississauga, creating armored vehicles to send back to the Ukraine to fight the war, and there's a peace. And it's just like, doing an interview with this beautiful gentleman who's creating these armored vehicles in Mississauga along with his staff, who are comprised of mostly Ukrainian refugees. And now we are essentially, and we've done that, we've been doing this, but this comes from, it's weird. It's just weird. Now we're like, because I've always had the thought, I'm like, man, why didn't Canada why don't we have our own car manufacturing company? Because once the supply chains got all cut off and people were waiting to buy cars, there were lack of chips, lack of supply chains, lack of cars coming in Canada, this, that, and the other. And at the time, I'm like, man, I wish we just manufactured and built our own car. But apparently it was just like, I don't know what it was, but we're like, nah, let somebody else build it, we'll ship it over. And then all of a sudden, just when it's profitable and just when it makes sense to build a particular type of car, we've got this brand new spanking, armored vehicle that's ready to go with booster seats, ejector seats, a button here, a button there. I'm like, how do we make this so quick? Because it was beneficial, and it's leading into a narrative where you're like tuning into the news for a second, or you glimpse by it by you tune in, and it's like, yes, now. And I'm not saying it's a tricky issue, and this is a weird, tricky issue, but at the same rate, I'm like, Canada is a nation comprised of so many different types of people from all around the world. Like, you got a Ukrainian refugee on television and another gentleman who's in charge of this company creating armored vehicles, sending it back to the Ukraine so that they could be fighting the war there. So we're doing multiple things. We're helping the war effort. And it leads me to ask, I'm like, man, is this, how deep are we in the war effort? And then you'll hear Zelensky talking one day saying, oh, if you don't send supplies, the next thing you know, you're gonna have to send your sons and daughters. And it's just like, so I see that, I'm like, so, we got obviously a good chunk of Ukrainian people in Canada, and all sorts of other people from all different corners of the world in Canada as well. Like, and Canada's always, at least in the public eye, before all this time, it was known as sort of there was at least, even if we weren't perfect and nobody said we were or we are, but like we did hold these, like, Canada was a voice of peace and reason. It wasn't a, it was a nation of like, or at least it aspired for the, nothing's perfect, sure. Did we go in and do other stuff along the way? Yes, but we had a reputation, and I feel like that's getting, it's changed during the past decade, at least 8 years under Trudeau, JT. You know, it's been going in a different direction. It's been going in a, and I'm like, you know, because we are a multicultural nation, is it weird that we're creating tanks for Ukrainians, but then like I'm sure if we looked around we can find a couple of Russian refugees who are also willing and able to build armored vehicles. So are we gonna like build armored vehicles for the Russian refugees? And but you're like, no, that's because that way we'd be helping Putin. And I'm like, man, this is all tricky. Why are we even building armored vehicles and giving away money and guns and stuff? What happened to Canada going in there with a bong and a white flag and just, you know, just bloodshot eyes, but overall having a great time, and say, hey everybody, what's going on, man? Why don't you just sit around for a second and take a hit of this bad boy and pass it to the left? You know what I mean? If it just, because it's like, I've said this before, majority of people worldwide like love each other, love interacting with each other. You hear people's, one of everybody's favorite things to do is you ask a person, if you had a little bit of dough, if you had a little bit of free time, what would you, oh, I'd like to travel the world, I'd like to go eat a little bit of food, I'd like to dance, I'd like to do. So people like interacting with different people, like learning about different cultures, because that way we can learn about ourselves. And the way you learn about yourself is you go and expose yourself to different things. So majority of people are like that. And yet when it comes to overall global leadership, we always manage to find, in most cases, 99.9% of world leader population is like made of a special cut of the old cunty cloth, if you will. And I wonder why. Because potentially because we you know, everybody likes monies, but at one point or another you got to be like, you know what, if it's like foreign money coming in, we got to question these things, man. We shouldn't just be like, yes, come in and invest in our real estate market, yes, come in and invest in our businesses, and start getting involved in our election policies and which candidates get pushed forward, which candidate gets suppressed and all that jam. We turn a blind eye as long as it's profitable. And I see it happening in different parts of the world. Like I get upset sometimes because as a young man I used to watch a lot of soccer, I used to play a lot of soccer, I used to follow a lot of the EPL, some of my favorite teams, different teams, and I see them being bought by foreign investors who have no interest in the game, who have no interest in the love of the, and they're not from the actual town itself or even involved in the any of the, and they just come in as a foreign investor and just dump a ton of cash, which becomes essentially a money laundering tool for them, sports washing, to just launder a ton of money, depending on whether it's European oligarchs or you know, a prince or a king from whichever country comes in and buys. And it's just like, at one point, if we love the things that if we cherish the things that we love, we gotta at one point be like, you know what, it's not for sale, fam. Can't put a price on this ass. You gotta spank that ass and be like, you like this ass? It ain't for sale, fam. Spank your ass, turn around and be like, no. And then they'll come back with a bigger number and then spank your ass again and be like, this ass ain't for sale, is what you say. And then they'll come back with a giant number, a number that you've not seen ever before. It's got bajillions and gajillions of zeros and dollars. And that's when, and that's basically, oh, the old snake just slithering down your neck, waving a dollar sign shaped apple, or just a dollar, you know, just figures, euros, pounds, yens, whatever is the, you know, it's the wave. And it's just, it's like, oh, take a bite of this, take a bite out of this yen, take a bite out of this peso, take a bite, and if we could just, and that's what it is, because you can have it, everybody can have a lot. You just have to, if we can, just like to mitigate these situations so that they don't go and slowly turn our society into something resembling China. And that unfortunately, as I love my Chinese people, I love my, but that's, you see authoritarian regimes very much so. It reminds me, it's no different than, you know, it's different authoritative methods. My heart goes out to anybody, and this is, I guess, a little bit, you know, I see stories, I'll see another story happening, and I think it's just Australia simultaneously has now implemented a digital ID. I'm not sure to what extent, I'm not sure if these are, what is happening to countries like Australia, like New Zealand, like Canada? What happened uh, during the past, decade, 3 decades? What happened that we? Because before, I've not gone to Australia, I've not gone to New Zealand, but my uh, point of view before the Schmandy Pandy from an outsider always seemed like very similar to Canada's. Very like, we're wild, loving, free spirited mofos who like to run around and do the natures, do a little bit of drink it poo, do a little bit of barbecue, wrestle a bear, wrestle a kangaroo, wrestle a rattlesnake, get bitten by a rattlesnake, get swole as a result of, almost die, come back to life, live to tell the story, those types of fellas and ladies. And then all of a sudden, the past few years, you see certain politicians coming in all these regions and kind of saying the same rhetoric, kind of discussing policies and trying to have a particular way of discourse where it's just like, are you guys robots, man? And it's like, so I ask you, how can you tell if your elections are being meddled with? I ask you, are your representatives saying some sort of speech that resembles another speech very similar to somebody else all the way down and God knows where? And you're like, how do these guys get similar ideas? And all of a sudden you're like, man, are these guys all attending the WEF and the World Economic Forums? Are these guys? And for the most part, yes, 99.9%. A lot of them, I don't know percentage wise, but a good portion of them. And then once in a while, you'll see like an inspiring person get in there and like do something for their country and put their country first and like just make and do things the right way. A great example of that was recently, I forget this gentleman's name, but in El Salvador, the president, he went down and put the boot on the throat of the cartel, and he's just like, no carteling around here, fam. We're gonna just lock all the MS-13s up, and the days of drugs and gravy are over. He said something like that. He said exactly that because I speak the language of El Salvador, El Salvadorian. Oh, he's so fluent in El Salvadorian. Is it Spanish? Si, senor. Thank you very much. Gracias. Yes, sirs. And every once in a while you'll see that. So there's always, and we got our own, honestly looking at Pierre, I don't know the guy too much, but he looks like a decent guy. He looks like he actually genuinely cares about Canada. And I don't like the overall fact that we got to constantly go between like, oh, left, right, all this. I just wish like we put our nation first and put our priorities first. And yeah, man, if there's anything extra, then we can start helping out. But that's the thing. I look at everyday life, I'm just like seeing homelessness, mental health crises always on the rise. Now you hear different groups, whether it's the adolescent or just like reg people having all sorts of issues because of the compounded interest of all the years of, for what it is, the real matter, that real concern is that, greedy politicians who get in there and just stuff their pockets and don't do anything for the reg people. They just like, endorse a few friends, associates who are like-minded and fill their pockets and then bounce. That's what it is. So how do we do that? We remove all sorts of monies from politics. That's how we do that. Defund politics, essentially. You should just be, if you're in politics, you should be, it's like a civil servant job, essentially. Making a salary. I shouldn't hear about you looking to make speeches later on after your retirement, getting paid millions and billions of dollars of endorsements and running all sorts of side deals and business. Do that on your own time, but that's the thing. When it comes to politics, I want you to, but overall is the, and sometimes we look at, I hear different stories, man. I don't know. It's like, you hear individuals doing these things and we're like, man, is it just the individual or is the problem is the system the problem? And probably a little bit of both. How do we work together to make it better? We make adjustments in the system when the system needs adjustment. And somehow I wish we were moving a little bit faster, just because you get bombarded by like redundant news and stories, and then the real stuff that actually we should be paying attention to, that should be getting resolved, takes forever. It takes the quote unquote like mass media or the corporate media or whatever to catch up with the what is commonly believed to be true, i.e. the lab leak theory, which is now like commonplace knowledge among. But it takes and these are the things that it's like even if they have to admit to the truth, unfortunately, it just gets like watered down. It gets stretched out in time. It gets muddied up in all sorts of different stories. And at the end of the day, life goes on, and we are all just we get back to the same old, same old. Nothing changes really. Nothing impactful actually changes. But we are doing our best. I believe it's how do we get to make a positive effort in tackling this particular situation in Canada? First of all, yeah, have a public inquiry into the matter. Is China, with the Chinese spy balloons and the Chinese police stations and the information coming in from our intelligence services, these are all pointing to certain things as to, what should we be doing? We should be, looking at Justin and be like, you know what, dude, it's been 8 years, fam. Like, wrap it up. This doesn't need to go on until 2025. Realistically, let's. I don't know how to go about it for like in terms of like doing a. How do you do it officially? How do you guys want to do it officially? Should we? Because like that's like it's just like 8 years for anybody. It's just it's too long, dude. It's too long. You're just like overstaying your welcome at this point. You don't care about Canadians. It's clear as day. I don't know why, but that's the thing with politics. They get in power. They hide behind a corporation or a lawyer and other men and women in suits who get up there, and just because they're on a side, or they've been on the side for so many years, they don't know anything else than to just argue for their side. And it becomes this like, man, once again, if we can just like hold hands, pass the old bong around and sing songs or dance a little bit or say stuff at least. Like, why can't we be friends? Why can't we? It's mostly because of a few cunty world leaders. As for the most part, most majority of peepsies are good peepsies who will gladly get along and have a blast essentially wherever they are. But that's what it is. So as a man, maybe I could be the special rapporteur, dude. I don't know. I think I could be a rapporteur. As a professional rapporteur, how would a rapporteur? A rapporteur, I am a rapporteur. As the most advanced rapporteur, I rapporteured hard in fucking 85 through early thousands. From 85 through the early thousands, I was touring as a rapporteur. I'd go around and I just like, I get hand-picked, I get hand-selected, hand-picked rapporteur. They're like, we need you to, and I'd go in there. I'm like, where do you need? And they'd be like, right there. And I'd go in it, wherever it be, wherever it led me. I'm just like, I just follow my nose, because it's like the most, because my nose sticks out the furthest point of my body that sticks out. Thus, ergo, I'm always following my nose, and so are you, and that's honestly, that's what it takes for you to be able to just like, man, what are the facts, and look at it down a center. And I did that for many a years. I used to, as a rapporteur, I'd get in there with a briefcase empty, ready to be filled up with lots of cash from whoever's hiring me as a rapporteur. And I get in there and I'm like, what do you need me to report on? And they're like, why don't you just do the investigation and come up with your own conclusions? I'm like, why don't you just tell me what you want me to say right now as a rapporteur? How about that money? And just I'd hold my bag open and they're just stuffing money. I'm like, you're gonna need a lot more than that. So I bring sometimes 2 bags as a rapporteur. They used to call me 2-bag rapporteur. Touring around, fam. You don't know me. I will just go and like, was it justified? Was the Emergencies Act justified? A rapporteur? Hells yeah, it was justified. That's our prime minister. It's justified, of course, after I get my bags. You know what I mean? Hand selected. Maybe buds. Maybe from the same, pool of associates. We're in the same pool. We're in a cesspool of associates. So I rapporteured, fam. I rapporteured with my shades on and off. I do stakeouts in a car, on a car. At times, I went underneath the car. I did have to make a break for it several times. The cars were started. They were not my cars. Much like a cat hiding under a car's shade on a hot summer's day. I do that because that's what I do. I do anything it takes to be a rapporteur. as a special agent rapporteur, touring around the cities, countries, from the mountaintops to the rivers that run deep. I rapporteured, and I'm willing to rapporteur again if should the if y'all call on me, you're like, Rob, we need you to rapporteur on this position, on this current thing. I will, dude, I'll get a magnifying glass. I will magnify, and because I think a magnifying glass, it helps enlarge and shine a light on any particular and that's one of the trade secrets, as a matter of fact, as to how to be a professional rapporteur. Not for the faint of heart. Not gonna be like, just like, I don't want anybody out there watching this getting any ideas of like thinking, oh, could we be a special rapporteur? Nah, fam. This takes you, first of all, do you know people? Because I don't. But like, if you, and that's what it is, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You go in there as a special rapporteur, not knowing anybody, not knowing anything, not taking any sides. Just again, going in there with an empty briefcase and hoping to walk out with a briefcase that is filled, or multiple briefcases filled with unmarked $20 bills worth $3 million, preferably from the 70s to 80s. And if you could do the laundering if you could put them in the laundry basket, or the laundry, if you can launder it for me so that I don't have to launder it myself. God, it's so hard being a rapporteur, dude. But you can find me. I'm here, available to rapporteur. And I rapporteur's hard. Baby boys, baby girls, ladies and gents, I hope your testicles are floating at a nice state wherever they are. I hope you are at your equilibrium. I hope your vulvas are ready to rock and roll. I hope that you and your grandparents and your parents and yourselves and perhaps your children are, wrestling animals to build strength, core strength. If you want to build core strength, you get wrestling with a coyote. Nothing builds core strength when you're piled on by 5-6 coyotes and just massive teeth, canine fangs in your face, drooling. Them contemplating, are we gonna rip this guy's face off first or his penis? And surprise, surprise, it's always the penis. So, but you on the bottom, now you're like, man, I'm cornered, I gotta get myself out of this. The old flipperoo. Now you flip and rude. Gotta make a run for it, man. You gotta make a run for it. It's 5 of them, 1 of you. That's the whole point of this. Boys and girls, wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. I hope you are kicking butt, taking names, whether you're running a business, whether you're in school, whatever you're doing, wishing you all the best, and we can together nip it in the bud, or other stuff as well. And we can have a great time whilst doing it too. I love you all. Where can you find these videos? Thank you for asking once again. Follow me on Instagram. Help your boy, help yourselves if you like. Follow me on Instagram. I've already said that one. Subscribe on YouTube. It's free. Okay, you do yourself a favor, you hit that subscribe button, you get the reminders on a weekly Wednesday coming in, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and we literally talk about everything and nothing, from high value to literally like, was this even worth mentioning? And yes, tis life, tis the beauty of life. Sometimes you talk about different things and man, retrospect is always 2020, but that's what we do around here. We put it all on the table and we look back and learn from it and laugh. And again, if you'd like to give back in any other shape or form, I highly appreciate the love and support you're given through your viewership. But you're like, man, I like where this is going. It's independent. Sure, this guy might not be in a nice suit. This guy might not be in a fancy car yacht. This guy might not be many things, but the one thing that he is that he's honest. Is that he'll say it like it is, and that was worth something, and it still is. So I might not be neon, I might not be fucking, but we're flying, baby. The wings have spread, like a lot of other things. We're spreading eagle, baby. And again, you can find these videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Patreon. Talk about it. I love you all. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys back here again on Friday. Peace out.